So today we're going to do a video where we're going to look at some of the notable players that is going to be out of contract at the end of this season. And this video was heavily inspired from a Tom Broker article that I read on the league website. In fact, all the players that list here is based on his article. So I'll definitely leave a link in the description below for you guys to read about that article. And yeah, when you look at these 15 players that is going to be out of contract, well, there is actually one player that, technically he's not out of contract at the end of this season, and that player is Carlos Vela, who, we know that he signed a new contract with LAFC just a couple of months ago, and that, he's going to be staying an extra year, and that his contract doesn't run out until next season. But I decided to put him on there, and certainly Tom Boger decided to put him on there because, he's probably the most notable player that is going to be out of contract very soon, and that, even though Vela did sign that new contract and kind of put the doubts along with a lot of LAFC and even certainly some MLS fans of whether or not if he is actually staying or is he going to go back to Europe, as there's been a lot of whisper that could be the case. At least he is going to be back at least for one more season. But the question is, after next season, I think we're going to have the same discussion. Is Carlos Vela going to potentially come back to LAFC and basically sign another contract to stay him there? Or is he going to be going to another club, which, one club that I know they've been mentioned a lot of potentially Vela going is Inter Miami, or going back to Spain and in La Liga. Now, so far this season, he has 13 appearances and he has scored 6 goals and 2 assists. But mind you, the fact that the 6 goals that he scored, 3 of them came in one game. He, of course, scored that hat-trick against the Colorado Rapids on opening day. And, that was the game where I thought, well, maybe Carlos Vela is basically going to go back to 2019 form, and that, he's been saying all the good things about he is going to really give it all for LAFC, because this potentially could be his last season with the club. But yeah, I mean, ever since that hat-trick performance against the Rapids, he has been kind of underwhelming. I mean, only 3 goals and 2 assists throughout those 12 appearances. And I mentioned before, one of the things that LAFC has been so successful this season isn't because of Carlos Vela. It's because of the fact that a lot of these players on this team has been getting it done, and that's what makes it even a little bit surprising, the fact that LAFC is doing well despite the fact that Vela is not having a very big impact, as we've seen in previous LAFC teams that are near the top of the standings. So yeah, there is definitely that big question of, is it time for LAFC to potentially move on to Vela? And that, as of now, it seems like they're okay with it, because without his big impact, and there's still no doubt that Vela can be a big impact to this team, and that we've also seen before for where whenever you have a player, and especially a leader like Vela, you could be a good locker room present. But so far he hasn't really made a big impact on the field, and that maybe LAFC would be okay if next year, when they are facing the same dilemma that they just faced a couple months ago, whether or not they should renew Carlos Vela contract because it's going to run out in the middle of the season, maybe they'll just say, yeah, you know what, we'll just let him go and see how it's going to go. Now, another notable player that is out of contract is Alejandro Pozuelo, who, of course, won the MVP back in 2020. And so far this season, I mentioned before that he has been battling some injury. And technically that's not correct because, I know he's been injured a lot. But so far he has been able to make 12 appearances and score 4 goals and 4 assists. Now, mind you, some of those appearances come off of a sub. So, he is still kind of trying to get himself back to full fitness. And really, I feel like, with all the injuries that Pozuelo has been suffering, I feel like it started to really wear on him, because you got to keep in mind, he's now in his 30s, and when you suffer so many injury like that, and as injury prone as Pozuelo has shown in these last year or two, it's going to start to wear you down. And, he has definitely not looked the same player that Toronto FC bought him in when he came into the league. So far, only 4 goals and 4 assists in 12 appearances. And, I know Pozuelo have mentioned that he likes to stay with TFC, but, for TFC, they're in a very interesting situation where, they're not really rebuilding, but they're more like retooling and trying to continue to keep the main core that has got them to be so successful in these past couple of years. But doing that because of this core started to age badly, and that, also they don't have any depth whatsoever, and also still having problem with the defensive issue. It's going to be interesting to see the Pozuelo situation of whether or not if he is indeed going to stay with TFC or TFC is going to let him go and basically go for another number 10, which is it's kind of the same thing when we saw with the Javinko situation where Javinko did so well and then things kind of fall off a little bit, and then eventually there was some dispute between Javinko and TFC that basically run Javinko out of the town. And while that hasn't been the case so far with Pozuelo, I won't be surprised it could be the same situation where it's another TFC number 10 that did well to start the league but kind of falled off a little bit, and now he potentially is going to be moved somewhere else. Now, number 3, we got Aaron Long, who is currently the captain of the New York Red Bulls that is going to be out of contract at the end of this season, and you know what that means. He's probably going to be traded to another team because that's how it is with the Red Bulls. And as much as I want to say that's a sarcasm, it is true. I mean, that captain role, if you're the captain of the Red Bulls, you know your time with the Red Bulls is not going to be very long for now because they've traded so many captains in the past couple of years. It's almost like an annual tradition that they would trade a captain to another MLS team. Though in the case of Aaron Long, he's been getting a lot of interest in Europe, and so far the Red Bulls have rejected most of those interests, and that it's good the fact that the Red Bulls want to keep him, but for a guy that he is definitely trying to break through the U.S. men's national team, and I thought in those 2 friendly games that the U.S. played where he basically start in center back, I thought he was okay. I mean, he was definitely not Miles Robinson kind of level, which a lot of people say that he might be the guy that replaced Miles Robinson in one of the center back role alongside with Chris Richard, but he was also so decent in that now it's going to be interesting to see whether the Red Bulls realize that we better cash in now because Aaron Long is actually not that young, and that he's also approaching that part where it's now or never that he makes his move to Europe, because once he passes prime, there's not going to be those European offer that we've seen from a couple of years ago, and we'll see whether if he is maybe even going to tell the Red Bulls that my contract is out this year. I'm thinking this is the year where I am going to go overseas and start to make that dream European move. Now, moving on, we got Daniel Sharry, who is going to be out of contract this season with 11 appearances, 4 goals, and 1 assist. And he's another guy that, with Sporting KC doing so badly this season, and I mentioned the fact that they really have some soul searching to do this offseason and some big decision to make this offseason. One of those big decisions is, do they keep Daniel Sharry? Because, with Sharry, if he does get into the open market, there's no doubt that there's going to be a lot of team that is interested in him. And that, for Sharry, his time with Sporting KC has been interesting. I would say that, he's a decent player in MLS, but he's also been kind of an inconsistent player too. I mean, last season, we know he had probably the best season in his career, and one of the reason why Sporting KC was very good on the attack. But this season, he's been okay. 4 goals, 1 assist with 11 appearances. He hasn't really has as bad as a fall off as what we saw back in 2018 and 2019. Remember when 2018 he had a spectacular year, hit double-digit goal, and then in 2019 he became the most cursed striker in the league. And at least this season he has been able to score those goals, but not at a rate what we saw from last season. And again, for Sporting KC, this off season they're gonna have to make that decision of whether or not should they just blow it up, and that they should just begin this rebuild, because they know that this has been kind of a weirdly kind of mesh kind of team where there's still some old core players that is in this team, but they're trying to maybe move on from them, and it hasn't really kind of worked out. I mean, we've seen before where teams try to move on from the old core and bring in the new core and hope that it kind of mesh together, and some team does it very well. I mean, the Seattle Sounders is a good example because they have always found a way to mesh like the old core with the new core, and doesn't have any fall whatsoever. But for most teams that is just not the case, and I think Sporting KC is experienced that, and this is also why they're going to maybe think about going for a rebuild, or maybe even do the unthinkable and potentially let go of Peter Vermees, the longest active tenure coach, so longest serving active tenure coach so far in MLS. Now at number 5 we got Jerzy Zardes with 6 appearances so far this season and scored 1 goal and 1 assist. Now keep in mind, Zardes hasn't been playing a lot this season because he has that situation with the Columbus Crew where he kind of wanted out. He didn't want to be there anymore, especially the fact that Caleb Porter literally throw him under the bus multiple time doing his latter tenure with the Crew, and that it was pretty clear that he had to move on because that relationship was really started to be bad. And then now he's with the Colorado Rapids, and he still haven't scored a goal for the Rapids, and still hasn't made that big impact that the Rapids were hoping he was going to make. And he's going to be out of contract this season, and if he continues to kind of play like the way that he's been so far this season, especially with the Rapids, I don't think the Rapids are going to re-sign him, and that's also going to be interest. It's also going to be interesting to see if the Rapids doesn't re-sign him. Where's Zardes going to go? I mean, I hate to say this, but I feel like Jersey Zardes has started to end up the same path that Dom Dwyer is right now, where he's a guy that used to be good in MLS and usually dominate the league, as what we saw from Zardes a couple years ago, and also had some U.S. men's national team aspiration and been on the. But, well, unlike Dwyer that had a really short tenure with the U.S. men's national team, at least Zardes had more of that time, but he's kind of a guy that he it feels like he's way past his prime and his start to hit that wrong end of 30. I would also say maybe he's kind of like a small version of Josie Altidore, where Josie used to be good and now he's isn't as good as it is, and his U.S. men's national team career is pretty much hanging but on a thread. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see if Zardes does go into the open market, which team is going to do so. Because if there's one thing that, even with Jersey Zardes still struggling, I still believe he can be a decent number 9 and a very serviceable number 9. And that's the reason why the Rapids pick it up, because they believe that, with a change of scenery, maybe he can get going. But so far, that just have not been the case during his short time with the Colorado Rapids. Then we got Sean Johnson with 13 appearance and have 8 clean sheet, and besides Carlos Vela and Alejandro Pozuelo, a guy that is kind of a notable player and kind of underrated on this list is Sean Johnson. Now, I will be shocked if NYCFC does not renew his contract, because he is 33 years old, and I don't think he's going to be moving to Europe anytime soon, because he has hit that age where, well, actually for a goalkeeper, that kind of age is like right around the prime of your career, so maybe there could be some European interest. But there's no doubt that I think Sean Johnson is going to be stay in MLS, and I know NYCFC is going to eventually lock him down to a contract extension, because if he is going to be out of contract and he's going to be in the free agency market, you bet that every single team is going to have interest in trying to light up NYCFC phone line, because they know that everyone want to have a guy that is potentially a goalkeeper of the year candidate, and a guy that could also be on the cusp of potentially be a starting goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup. Yes, I said that because I still am so amazed of his performance against Uruguay just a couple of days ago, and that with the way that I know Matt Turner still has the number 1 spot, but with Turner going to Arsenal this summer and him not getting many minutes, and then Zach Steffen seems like he's been falling out with the U.S. men's national team, and the other goalkeeper that hasn't got a lot of minutes either is Ethan Horvat with Nottingham Forest. There could be a case that Sean Johnson could be on that spot, because one thing you want your goalkeeper heading into the World Cup is that you want him to play regularly and not just play second fiddle to a Premier League team, and that could be the case for Sean Johnson. He could really shot up the depth chart in terms of the goalkeeping spot for the U.S. men's national team, and I always felt like he hasn't given a fair chances for the U.S. men's national team. I feel like he is a guy that can definitely be decent if he's given the chances, and so far for NYCFC, he's been proving to be an incredible goalkeeper, and he could also be something similar to what Matt Turner was last year, where Matt Turner really didn't get into this discussion before he really kind of shot up the goalkeeping depth chart because of how impressive his performance was with the Revs in that Supporters' Shield standing season, and the fact that he's now getting an offer to go to Europe and play for Arsenal during the summer transfer window. Now, next we got Victor Wanyama, who is currently a DP for Montreal. Now, this is another one I think there's definitely a case that Montreal is going to lock him down to a new contract. Wanyama has been just the engine for this Montreal team so far in the midfield, and I will be very surprised that they do not renew his contract, even if he is currently on a designated player track. I think now that Montreal has finally started to see the benefit of when they got Victor Wanyama, because I remember when Wanyama came into the league, I mean, he was a well-known player, a player that played for a different couple of big teams in the Premier League and also in the Scottish champion or the Scottish Premiership with Celtic. But he's a guy that kind of got off to a slow start in MLS, but he is now starting to be kind of the Victor Wanyama that we saw a couple of years ago when he was playing for Spurs and also for Southampton. Now another kind of engine room in the midfield that has been very important for a team is Toronto FC Jonathan Osorio, who is also out a contract this season with 11 appearances, 3 goals, and 3 assists. And while Osorio has kind of show a little bit of a drop off in these last couple of years, he's still elite in my opinion. I mean, he's a regular in the Canadian men's national team, and that he's pretty much now just a club legend with TFC of what he has done, and that he's been with the club since day one and done so many good things for this team, and that I'll be kind of surprised if TFC decide to let him go. I mean, I know he said that he wants to go to Europe and that the table are still open for him to go to another team, especially for a European team, but come on. This is Jonathan Osorio. TFC is the club that he belongs, and I think TFC would eventually get a contract extension for him sooner or later, but as of now, he is still just going to be out of contract. Now, next up, we got Andre Shinyashiki, who currently have 4 appearances and have scored 2 goals and no assists. Now, he is one of the 2 players that I'll mention the fact that if he is going to be out of contract, he's not eligible in terms of qualifying for the free agency based on this current CBA negotiation. So some teams, if one team is going to get Andre Shinyashiki, they need to buy his rights out from Chara FC, which means that they're going to have to fork in some garbage bucks in order to do so. But for Shinyashiki, I think it's still too early. I think like this with the Rapids, I would say for Shinyashiki, his time with Charlotte FC is still to be determined whether if he's going to stay long term. I mean, he has kind of got off to a good start with Charlotte FC. Have already scored a goal on his debut, and then it seems like it's like Charlotte might have found a guy that besides Schwiderski can really be a potent number 9, especially coming off the bench. But his contract currently on. Now, at number 10, we got David Ochoa, who one of the key thing I want to mention is that he has yet to make a start for RSL. Now, I know he has been dealing with some injury in the beginning of the season, and hence that's why he has yet to make a start. But, I think he's now back healthy, and that the reason why he isn't getting a start is because that guy called Zach McMath, yeah, he is really like that. He doesn't give as much love as what you see some of these goalkeeper that has been very decent so far in MLS. But for David Ochoa, I feel like this situation with RSL is similar to what we saw with him, or with the Minnesota United situation with Tyler Miller and Dane Sinclair. I mean, Dane Sinclair had a decent run, and then he basically would kind of being benched because once Tyler Miller got back, Tyler Miller was really lock it down, and that eventually the Loons did extend Dane Sinclair contract, and now it seems like Dane Sinclair gets the spot back. So this could be the same case too, where I think for RSL, it's tempted for them to move on for David Ochoa, but they know that they're probably going to sign him to a long-term contract, and that once Zach McMath maybe suffer an injury or maybe start to fall on form, maybe David Ochoa basically will step in. I mean, I feel like David Ochoa just basically fall into the classic victim of the goalkeeping position where, when you get injured, and if the other goalkeeper replaces you and starts getting a hot form, then you basically automatically move down in the depth chart. Now, at 11, we got Latif Blessing with 13 appearances, and so far he hasn't scored a goal and hasn't registered an assist. He's the only player on this list that is kind of an attacker that hasn't registered any of that, though he's kind of more becoming a inverted kind of pressing midfielder for this LAFC team. And for Blessing, he is one of the 2 I think remaining player that is still on that expansion team for LAFC, the other being Carlos Vela. But yeah, I think his time with LAFC maybe there's hint that it could come to an end because he hasn't really looked as good, at least in this season, as we've seen in previous year. Though, mind you, maybe this will give a chance for LAFC to potentially sell him on to either another MLS club or going to Europe, because he's still a relatively talented youngster. I mean, he's only 25 years old, even though it feels like he's been in the league for a very long time now. So yeah, that could be it. This could be another player that maybe LAFC might be moving on. Now, another player that they could be moving on, though this one I don't think is going to be the case, is Ryan Hollinshead. And I'm kind of still shocked the fact that FC Dallas decided to move on from Ryan Hollinshead, because I think Hollinshead has been kind of a guy that he's not really a guy that you think that is, well, I think he's kind of like more like a modern day fullback, where he's a guy that can definitely go up the field and score some goals and assist some goals, and that's exactly what he has done. I mean, 11 appearances so far, 4 goals and 8 assists. By far in terms of stat lines, the best player on this list out of all the players that is currently out of contract. And there's no doubt that I think LAFC is looking to lock him down on a contract extension soon, because if you keep putting that kind of number, there's no way he's going to be on the out of contract list at the end of this season. And it's also kind of interesting the fact that, I think coming into this year, Hollinshead, when he come to LAFC, I thought he was maybe just going to be kind of a backup and maybe used for more depth. But, since there's been some injuries that LAFC had to deal with, and him being thrusted into the starting role, he has taken advantage of that with authority. And that, again, I think for LAFC, there's no doubt that they're going to have to lock him down to a long-term contract, especially with the way that he's been performing so far this season. Now, one guy that hasn't really been performing very well so far this season is Benji Michelle, who has 11 appearances, only scored 1 goal and no assists. And again, Benji Michelle, another player that, Orlando City thought that he was going to be the heir of Daryl DK, and yeah, it just have not worked out. And he's also kind of a player that, after just an incredible rookie season he has from Orlando City coming out of their academy, he hasn't really been as impactful as we've seen in this past season. And you wonder, maybe this could be the year that they might move on from him, and especially with him not, he has still played regular minutes, but he's been more kind of coming off the bench kind of guy. I don't think he's going to be a guy that has a long-term future for Orlando City, and that they might move on from him in the future. Now, one of the thing about Benji Michelle, just like what I said with Andre Shinyashiki, is that he doesn't qualify in terms of being a free agent, because he hasn't played in MLS long enough to qualify to be a free agent. So if another team want to get Benji Michelle, they're going to have to buy his rights, which again, they need to spend that garbage buck to Orlando City in order to do so. Now, number 14, we got Bill Hamid with 10 appearances so far with 2 clean sheets. And just like the Sean Johnson situation, I don't think DC United is going to let Bill Hamid go, and that he's going to receive a contract extension. I mean, he is still their best goalkeeper so far, even though he has been dealing with some injuries in these last couple of years. And also, he's a guy that, like Sean Johnson, getting it up to his age, that he's not going to be going to Europe. And unlike Sean Johnson, at least Bill Hamid had that European adventure, and yeah, it did not work well whatsoever with Midtjylland in Denmark, and hence that's why DC United decided to kind of bring him back. So yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that I think is going to receive a contract extension pretty soon, and that I'll be shocked if he ends up in the open market, because if he does open up in the open market alongside with Sean Johnson, there's going to be a lot of team, especially for teams that desperately need goalkeeping help, that is going to try to ring up and hope to get him off of free agency. And we probably might have the best goalkeeping class in this free agency if both Bill Hamid and Sean Johnson ends up on that list, which I doubt that of course is going to happen. But now moving on to the last player, a guy that I think most likely is not going to be renew his contract out of all the players that I mentioned, is Gonzalo Higuain. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Inter Miami is going to move on from him. So far, only 10 appearances, 2 goals, and 1 assist, and his time with Inter Miami has been, let's just say, rocky at best. I mean, especially now that Miami has found their new number 9 in Leo Campana, and it seems like he's pretty much replaced Higuain in that number 9 role, and that Higuain also has been having trouble in terms of getting game time because of it. There's no doubt that I think Inter Miami is going to be moving on from him, and that he's going to be another one of those players that, you know, right now Inter Miami is trying to move on from all those players that they bought and all those players that they built in the expansion season and also in the previous year, because they know that core that they trying to build was an absolute disaster, and that now it seems like they're moving into a new direction, which means that all these players that were part of that so-called old core and part of that expansion team, they're pretty much going to be gone, and that a lot of them have already been gone with the way that Inter Miami basically dropped a nuke on their team this offseason and have really started with a fresh new team. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and let me know in the comments below, out of all these players that is out of contract, which one most likely is going to have his contract renew, and which player is most likely not going to have his contract renew and ends up on the free agency market. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.